Okay, my name is Rosie McKnight, and I come to every guidelines group, and it's a great privilege. I was an explorer with Robert Monroe for several years when he was developing the programs. So let me tell you something about Bob and myself. We have some things in common. Our brains don't work the same way. He's very brilliant, left brain, and was an incredible monitor. Incredible. He loved doing the work with the explorers. And I loved being an explorer, which is not what Bob would like. But Bob was born in Kentucky. I was born in Kentucky. Bob's parents moved to Ohio, to Columbus. My parents moved to Dayton, Ohio. And then Bob went on to New York. He's probably about 18 years older than I am. And he went on to New York with a first wife. I don't think anyone remembers who the first wife was, but he went to New York with someone. And I went to New York to go to school at Union Theological Seminary because I had to meet my husband there, David McKnight. See, these things we don't know until hindsight. So I spent about 8 years in New York City, and it was there that I first heard about Bob Monroe. And not till I was ready to leave New York, David is my ex-husband, and I mention him in the books. And
Maybe you shouldn't mention him.
You know, my hands, I cannot talk without moving my hands. They say if a first grader, if you tie their hands down, they can't talk. A lot of times you have to use, so, where'd it go?
On the back of the chair.
Oh, it's up here. Okay, excuse me.
But he had it draped over your shoulder, so maybe it's
okay.
out of your way.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So what happened in New York, I stayed in New York for the summer and stayed while David came on down to Virginia to get ready for school and start his teaching job at a community college. And I was staying with a lady by the name of Rosemary D. Simone. And Rosemary was written up in Bob's first book, Journeys Out of the Body. How many of you have read that book? That's a classic. That's a real classic. And I had not read the book, never heard Bob Monroe's name, and Rosemary D. Simone just said, well, when you get to Virginia, I want to come down and visit, and I'll call the Monroes and introduce you to them. But Rosemary, if you will remember the book, she had this group in her apartment, and the group met regularly, and they were asked to do an experiment with someone that was working with Bob Monroe when Bob was doing his out-of-body out-of-body work. Wasn't work, I'm sure, but they had a chair in the room, empty, so that Bob was supposed to come and sit in that chair, and there must have been 8 or 10 people in the group. And Rosemary said at one point she got up and went into the kitchen and came back and sat in the wrong chair. And Bob, she had never met Bob, and when he interpreted what happened in the group, he said, well, Rosemary, you sat right on me. You sat on me in this chair. And he told details about each person in the room, things that happened. Really incredible details. So he was very accurate in his out-of-body work, and that's what they were trying to figure out, what was going on. Because Bob thought he was going crazy, actually. He knew nothing about out-of-body travel. And of course, that was early on. There weren't many books out about the out-of-body and this type of thing. But his book is still on I don't know how many editions he's had, and it never gets old. So David and I got settled on a little farm in Virginia called Oak Hill Farm, and Rosemary decided it was time to come down and visit us. So she came down and she called the Monroes just to see if we could come over and meet them. So it was exciting when I started hearing what Bob did. Had no idea, didn't understand it. You know, when you try to describe to people what you do, it's not that easy. So I met the Monroes and we started asking questions, and Bob says, no, we don't do it that way. I don't talk about it. I put you in the lab so you can experience it. And I always say, probably on Halloween, trick or treat, someone comes and Bob will say, you know, you have to go into the lab, you know, your treat would be. But anyway, that's just sort of my sense of humor. But we went over, and this is the dining room. But of course, this is not where, this was not built then. There's a place called Whistlefield Farm up the way, and Bob had his laboratory up there, and they had a very nice house. So we were invited for dinner, and Nancy is just an incredible hostess. And she and Bob were so opposite. I mean, she was impeccable in this. I remember the first time I saw her, she had this beautiful white dress. And Bob was just sort of, I mean, it's just Bob, you know, laid back, and his clothes were always sort of wrinkled. And I mean, that was Bob. So they were an interesting team. And so Bob just said, well, you come back tomorrow and I'll put you in the laboratory and just see what happens. Well, 3 of us came back, and there were 3 check units. And I was so tired from cooking and getting ready for my guests that they put me in and turned on this sound, and it was like, I went right to sleep. But David and Rosemary did very well. So what happened is that Bob just realized that I did not have a job, and I was a good typist. Actually, I had been a typing teacher in the summers. Well, not in the summers. After I graduated from seminary, it was a job teaching typing. And that was when we had typewriters. I don't even know if there are any left on the planet. But anyway, Bob just said, Rosie, could you come over and work for me part-time? You come over and you could do some typing, and I was happy to. So we set some dates, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, times that I would come over and work. And I would be sitting doing my work, and Bob would get up and say, I think it's a good time. I'd like to put you in a check unit. And he'd do this almost every time I came. And I'm like, this is wonderful. I love to take an afternoon nap. And they put in this check unit that's dark. And at that time, they had wires they put on your fingers and even on your toes. And so I was thrilled to I'd get in there, and I didn't know. See, and I think that was part of the secret of why I was a good explorer. I just relaxed, and whatever happened. You know, if you have a concept, I'm going out of body, I'm going to meet 10 guides today, sometimes that stands in the way. You get a block if you just think, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's better to just let it happen. Same way with life. I mean, you plan your life, but you have to be spontaneous too. So we were having regular sessions, and just incredible things would happen. Surprised me. And Bob and I, we were always excited to have a session, because we never knew what was going to happen. You never know what's going to happen. And that's the excitement about it. My guidance, when I put this book together, I realized they had a plan, and each session had a very specific purpose, and it all fitted together. And they even say that somewhere here, I think. But it ended up just being an exciting journey for both of us.